so much for joining us today. I know we've got this in for 90 minutes, but I think we'll probably won't take that amount of time. I've planned in for about a 20-minute presentation just to kind of give an overview of some of the work that we're doing with some of the local authorities around here in the North East. So let me show my screen. Will, just give me a thumbs up if you can see that.
That's brilliant.
Real, thank you. So hi guys. I thought I'd talk to you a little bit today about our company Wordnerds. So I'm one of the big data consultants, and essentially Wordnerds help CX, insight and research teams to leverage customer feedback to genuinely listen and act on those discussions. Today, so Will and I met when the team came up to Newcastle for a study visit, and we did a presentation around Wordnerds and what that might offer to, and he asked me to come today and just essentially come and talk to you all about some of the work that we've been doing with local authorities in this region. So today I thought I'd introduce Wordnerds, just talk a little bit around our innovations and what makes us different. Specifically, we work at the intersection of two disciplines of artificial intelligence and corpus linguistics. Some use cases from some of our local authorities, and I've got one use case as well from Transport for Wales, which I'm sure is a little bit closer to home for everyone watching. And just very briefly, a few of the future trends that we're seeing in AI and natural language processing and text analytics, which are the fields that we work in. So we essentially help some of the UK and the world's largest and best performing CX teams to listen and genuinely understand what their customers are telling them, so that those insight professionals have the confidence to act on the data that they are collecting. And when we talk about actionable insights, the biggest asset that you've got is your text data, and the reason for that is 90% of all data exists in the form of unstructured text, so words that are written to and about your organisation across stakeholders, citizens, visitors to your region, but only 18% of all companies, irrespective of whether they're a local authority or not, are actually taking advantage of that information. And the main problem for that is essentially the problem of language. The English language is really complex. The Welsh language is even more complex to those that don't speak it. Nearly every word in the English language has more than one meaning. There are regional differences. I use it very differently to colleagues of mine who were born and brought up here in Newcastle. Equally, we use language very differently to those in rural regions. Young people use it very differently to old people. On social media, we're incredibly sarcastic. We replace words with emojis, and don't get me started on spelling and grammar. And it makes it incredibly difficult for researchers and insight professionals and people that need to act on this information to deal with it at the scale that often it is coming into an organisation at. And typically, the only way that people have really dealt with it is essentially to use keywords to search for things within the data to try and analyse that. The second thing is that it's really important that we treat language in context. So in this example, we would probably all agree that your service is outstanding in the context of customer service is always a really positive thing. But if we take the same word outstanding, actually an outstanding invoice or an outstanding debt is the worst type of debt that you can get. And the context around outstanding in these two examples is wildly different. And it's really important that we understand that. And similarly, you can't treat words like numbers. You can't just look for certain keywords in relation to other keywords. So in this example, this water tastes like crap. Might be useful to a water company looking to look at all of their quality issues in their area. But if we take all of the same words and put them in a different order, actually what we're seeing is maybe to someone trying Budweiser for the first time. And finally, essentially in most organisations, text analysis is happening in silo. So you've got lots of data coming into your organisation through your social media and marketing teams, within complaints, within your customer experience teams, whether you're doing surveys or or other bits and pieces in reviews, but also across outside of your organisation in things like forums or news articles and PR pieces. This essentially makes it really difficult to handle within and use in a meaningful way because of the way that it's structured and how it's dealt. Often you've got some tools that might try and deal with some of the text data across some of those channels, and essentially they're excellent at getting the data into the tool itself, so collecting that information from your contact centre or through surveys, and it'll do a very top level overview of what's in that data. But essentially what we get and what we class as essentially afterthought analytics, this idea that text analysis only happens in the form of sentiment scores at a post level or word clouds, and it's really difficult to do anything useful with data when it's presented back to you in that way. In this word cloud here, for example, the great is really great, but the good is not good. And again, we need better understanding of what that actually means. Why are we seeing problems with pricing and sales in this word cloud example? And why are customers not necessarily loving the product on offer? At the same time, there is a wealth now of AI tools coming into the market, and they're either too top level, and so you get really top level categories. So for local authorities, you might get X number of conversations are tagged with things like billing or bin collections or customer service, but within that you might still have thousands and thousands of individual instances that fall into those top level categories. And similarly, you might receive a sort of top level category level sentiment, which again, if you know that you've got a sentiment score of 50 out of 100, how useful is that? Actually, what we want to know is how's that sentiment changing, why is it changing, and really get an understanding of what's happening behind those top level metrics. At the other scale, though, it can also be too granular. So you go from those really top level categories with thousands of examples in them down to individual examples. And again, that's not helpful either. An individual instance where somebody has had a negative experience also can't be that helpful when you're trying to make decisions to improve services. What we need to find is that middle ground of how many people feel a certain way, and essentially start to put numbers on those types of topics of conversation. So Wordnerds essentially sits below all of those frontline tools, aggregating information from all over the business and analysing it in a way that you can act on that data. So we treat and we work with lots of different types of data sets, from social media and marketing tools, from complaints that might occur in your contact centre or on your live chat or via email, with customer experience teams analysing survey feedback and other direct forms of feedback, in review sites and other things when we're working with retailers, and increasingly news and PR and forum sites where stakeholders are talking to you and about you and reading about various changes that you are implementing. We process all of that information through Wordnerds, and then essentially what we're trying to do is share those insights across the organisation, and we can do that either through business intelligence tools or our on-site reporting. And the main thing that we're aiming for here is essentially to bridge the AI gap between what I said before around either things being too top level or too granular. We're essentially using very old school corpus linguistics to bridge that gap, to deliver what analysts need. So AI can give you those sort of pre-trained categorizations and that category level sentiment. Essentially, those categories come from a predetermined list of categories. But that means that you need to know in advance what you're looking for. And sometimes in organisations, well, actually in nearly every organisation, you can't always predict the things that might come up. And that's a real problem because that's where things get missed. At the same time, you also need to be able to surface all of the things that are trending, things that issues that are emerging with your stakeholders that you might want to resolve quickly. So essentially, the platform that we use will help you to find surprises in the data that you wouldn't have looked for, and we do that through the corpus linguistics and the AI. So essentially, find topics in an unsupervised way. So we don't need a human to come and do this. We get our system allows us to instantly see topic clusters, so word pairings that are coming up in any data set, even if you didn't know that they were there. And then also go and group the data by in clever ways. So not just relying on keyword matching to do this, but also to look at people who might be describing very similar ideas but using very different or surprising language. And that's really useful because if someone describes a negative customer service experience but puts a spelling mistake in there or uses language or a word or a term that you may not have predicted, it's really important that we can still grab that and that stakeholders can feel like they can communicate in their own way without feeling like they're being misunderstood. So our system allows us to go away and find people that are sharing very similar ideas, even if they use very different vocabulary. So we essentially allow our customers to do three things: daily monitoring, subject deep dives, so in performance management, just generally what's happening, what's trending, what's coming up, deep dives to understand customer journey mapping, market research, voice of your stakeholders, and then ad hoc reporting. So you've got a particular project with a particular budget, and we can support with the with consultations and things like that. So essentially, this job is getting harder, and we're finding organisations across the sector are seeing more and more problems. There's more and more data coming into the organisation. It's really important that you use it. It's really important as well that you still allow that your stakeholders to easily communicate with you, and that again brings more problems. It brings more channels. It brings more challenges with the data. It's ensuring that that the answers that they're looking for and the outcomes that they're looking for are being delivered, and if they're not, working out where the barriers are to delivering those issues. It's really important that they have an enjoyable experience, an expected digital experience. With retail and other sectors leading the way, you're finding that citizens are becoming more demanding of very similar experiences. They should be human, so there's nothing more frustrating, as I'm sure you can imagine, than talking to a bot, and therefore making sure that your communication is human is really important. And similarly, it needs to be on the channel that people feel most comfortable with, and increasingly, particularly with younger generations, that isn't phone calls, that might be other types of online forms like live chat or web forms, etc. As we said, information everywhere, and what could we do with all of this information if within your organisation? So here are just a few case studies that we've had from some of the clients that we've worked with. So starting with Newcastle City Council, we've essentially run some monitoring projects for Voice of Our Citizens, looking at social media data as an early warning system for issues across the city. In doing that, we found some really interesting findings around data black spots, where essentially we couldn't get any signal for phones and things like that for communication. That allowed the council to go back to and lobby the communications partners that they work with to ensure that there aren't any black spots across the city. They're currently putting together a bit of a kind of communications mapping piece to essentially understand the extent of that problem. In essence, these findings weren't things that the council were aware of. For those of you that are aware, Newcastle City Council is a smart city, and having communication black spots in it isn't what they're after. Equally, we monitor things like frustrations with where traffic's currently, where the traffic problems are, where roadwork problems are coming in. We know that in certain areas they've had to replan out at what point they put the roadworks in because it was causing real problems and real frustration. We've also done some work on understanding the business community in more detail and the visitor communities in more detail, using social media to gather that information. In a totally different way, we also work with the NHS. So the NHS have a digital function called NHSX, and we help them with the latest research, mining essentially research abstracts from a site called PubMed. This allows us to, allows the teams to really improve their research efficiency. If you can imagine reading through sort of thousands and thousands of abstracts on a daily basis, we're now able to kind of process a lot more in much more efficient ways, so that we can get real time the best research out to the teams that need it in the most efficient way. Newcastle Gateshead is a tourism management organisation, and we've been manning social conversations for them, looking at how people how visitors are visiting our high streets post-pandemic, and looking at how we can inform campaigns to improve visitor numbers across some of our key high streets outside of the city centre. And we've run some really successful campaigns and built an app off the back of some of the findings there. In other areas, we've also looked at, we work very closely with housing associations like Sovereign Housing or Rosebery Housing, One Manchester over in the northwest, and all looking at how we can essentially use all sorts of data from surveys, social media, live chats, contact centre information, information that's being logged on their tenant service portals, essentially to in a nutshell, avoid fines from the regulator by improving and ensuring that tenant satisfaction is upheld, making sure that we can find high risk problems that might be escalated to the Ombudsman. We've also used the data to resolve antisocial behaviour problems at a neighbourhood level, and essentially just stop issues from spiralling and help repair teams to get teams out to the properties that need it. We've been working with Transport for Wales, tracking passenger sentiment, looking at how we can aggregate feedback across the railway in real time, essentially surface surprises, monitor and improve passenger journeys from all across Wales, from kind of inner city lines all the way to the valleys lines. We're essentially helping their insights teams by saving them time on the analysis, going through the data a lot quicker, but also surfacing those improvements so that they can make really confident decisions about what is needed on the railways of today. And finally, a really interesting one, so a collaboration piece between Sport England and Middlesbrough Council, who have a number of impoverished wards within their remit, some of the most impoverished areas in England. We are working with them to essentially engage really hard to reach communities that typically don't interact with the council at all, to essentially improve their health and well-being and take up of sport, particularly with communities that perhaps don't speak English or simply just don't engage with the council. We're doing that in a number of ways. The data sets that we're using are everything from forums, interviews, using business partners to access further data, surveying out on the streets, call data and that kind of thing, essentially to try and increase this citizen engagement and get them to understand the activities that councils are putting in place to essentially improve healthy lifestyles in some of those wards. And finally, I suppose just a few of the future trends that we're seeing within the AI and NLP space. We know for local authorities that AI tools can be. We're certainly starting to see now that there is a much widespread adoption of AI tools to help automate processes, improve workflows, but also to make to allow local authorities to be more human. That's a weird concept, considering we're talking about using some digital tools to do that. But AI allows you to essentially treat every customer or every citizen and give them their own voice. That's not possible when you're trying to do this with human analysis and just add more and more people to the analysis of this stuff. By giving yourself a leg up and being able to essentially handle more data, we're seeing actually you can provide more personalised experiences. You can understand who's changing, use the data to understand whose circumstances are changing in negative ways, and what financial changes are looking like, etc. We're seeing a lot more in the space of conversational AI, so using chatbots in contact centres is a really common one to essentially start routing citizens to the right services much more quickly without the need for humans, essentially to reduce that burden on the contact centres and reduce those poor wait times. We're seeing much better voice to text accuracy. Not going to lie, it's still not great. The Geordie accent is still not one that has been that is being picked up, and I'm sure there'll be similar challenges over in Wales. But it is getting better. We are seeing much more, much bigger improvements and step changes in the accuracy of that voice to text data, which gives us a lot more scope to bring in even more data and analyse it in a central pot. And finally, looking at neural networks, which are the big databases that all artificial intelligence tools are based on, in multiple languages, and that allows us to get much more accurate with our understanding of and nuances of languages, particularly that aren't in English. And that was my whistle-stop tour. Will, how are we doing for time?
Oh, yeah, we're doing very well with time. I was going to ask any questions, but you've beaten me to it. So if anybody does, I think the Q&A is going here. Okay. So the first question from Charlotte: how is changing sentiment measured? Is it a change, i.e. percentage of positive words? Is it measurable quantitatively?
Yes, so I guess the way that Wordnerds look at it is in multiple ways. So we have trending dashboards that allow us to look at around a particular topic or bunch of topics, as a score. How is that changing over a set time period? Is it going up or down, and by how much? So we do measure it quantitatively. We also measure it on a what we call a 5 split sentiment, which is essentially, if you imagine your emojis from very angry all the way up to very happy, with neutral in the middle, and mildly positive and mildly negative on either side. Essentially, what we're not doing now is looking for positive and negative words. So the way that we calculate sentiment is very much based on context. If you think back to that example I had of outstanding service versus outstanding customer, an outstanding debt, we're not just looking for the word outstanding to determine whether something's positive. We're very much using corpus linguistics to essentially look at the fingerprint of the sentence and understand, is this person happy or sad from what they're telling us? And you know, we use AI and linguistics to essentially get that understanding and teach a computer to understand that too. So that means that if I don't know, in the instance of a train company, where we've got someone being like, great job, Transport for Wales, I've missed my meeting for work again this morning. We would recognise, potentially followed by a bunch of negative emojis, we'd recognise that that's probably based on the structures of that sentence, that's probably involved in sarcasm, and therefore the kind of sentiment related to that would be negative and scored accordingly. I hope that answers your question, Charlotte.
I obviously I come from North Wales, and I get so much people on my Twitter feed being really spiteful for Transport for Wales, so I can't imagine the data that you pull, honestly. Like the train that goes from Bangor to Chester, I think it could be 2 carriages sometimes, and we're packed like sardines. So yeah. A question from me. So do you find that data can vary between, like, say, social media questionnaire or something? Because I feel like people tend to be a bit more nice in questionnaires, whereas if they don't know who they're talking to on social media, they might be a bit more honest.
Yeah, completely. So quite often we do a lot of work with voice of customer programs, and part of that is understanding different voices across different channels and recognizing what normal looks like across those channels. So what you might find with survey data is fantastic for getting a real, assuming that you ask the right questions, in getting a real sense of citizen satisfaction at that, and being able to collect really rich data to support your research. Where social media isn't equally useful, but often negatively charged, or more certainly have a more polarised conversation. Now, social can be a really, really good place for getting a genuine, unbiased view of what people think about your organisation, and that can be really useful, assuming that it's not being benchmarked against a survey or a contact centre, and it doesn't always mean that just because your contact centre has a lower sentiment score than your Twitter feed, that your contact centre staff are, doing a bad job. It's just the nature of some of these channels invite more interesting conversations, shall we say, than others.
No, I completely agree, and I think that's what's so good about this company, is that because you're accessing social media channels and stuff like that, you're getting the real picture of what the public may think of you. And sometimes I think companies may be a bit blindsided or favour some feedback over others, but this gives you like a real view. Okay, so this person is anonymous, don't know why. Thank you for the presentation. I was wondering how you retrieve data from social conversation, well, not social conversations. I can't imagine that you pull anything from chats or social media channels like Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp.
Yeah, so a mix of ways. So we love Twitter because Twitter is an open source platform, assuming that they haven't got they haven't deleted tweets or anything like that. So if you have a Twitter account, we use enterprise APIs. They make the tweets available to us based on our search terms. So, for example, if I wanted to find people talking about the traffic in Newcastle, I would be able to essentially put those search terms into Twitter, and it would give me all tweets relating to my searches that match my searches in that sense. And I'm using an enterprise API for that. We also have an enterprise API for Facebook, and you can do the same with WhatsApp. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all owned by Meta. It's a much different beast. It's very much a kind of lockdown platform. So essentially, the only data that you can retrieve is data that you own as an organisation. So if you've got business WhatsApp feeds, we can there's APIs that can pull that data in. Similarly, you need to have sort of reauthorize your Facebook page account, and we can pull that information through as well. It wouldn't just be, can you show me everybody living or registered to Newcastle or your local authority and see what they're talking about. Unfortunately, that's not the sort of data that you can get from Facebook. I hope that answers that question for you.
Yeah, I think Twitter, I don't know if it's the best platform for you to use or anything like that, but I think if people are giving opinions and stuff, I think Twitter would probably be the place that people do it, especially like complaints and stuff. Because I feel like if you tweet a company, often you can get a response quite quickly because it's public. So is there any more questions? Anybody else in the chat have another question? Any more questions? No. All I've said as well is I hate those chatbots so much. They're so annoying. God. But they do learn.
Well, I guess one of the things that we can do is maybe make some of these. Oh, it looks like one Q&A. One more question may have come in. Is there one more?
Oh, one more. Test needs. Do you have an ideal sample size? Are there instances where there would not be enough data to gather to get an accurate representation?
Yeah, so sample sizes are really interesting. It does depend slightly on the project. So one of the things that we recommend is certainly from the perspective of Wordnerds, at what level would a platform like Wordnerds make sense? So we work with some clients who have their sort of insights or research capacity is one person, and therefore the sample size that makes sense for them would be much smaller than, say, a team of 10 people trying to analyse a similar set of research. In terms of sample sizes for supporting research, we tend to aim for a couple of thousand responses is a nice starting point. But actually, when we're using social media as a research tool, often it's just actually what can we evidence in these conversations to support the research project that we're going for. And whilst there may only be a couple of hundred tweets that are supportive of the particular research project that we're talking about, it's often within a sample of a lot more data, say 10,000 tweets that we've had to scrape and then essentially find needles in the haystack that are useful for your project. So we tend, I don't have an exact answer for this. I think it is dependent on the project that we're working on, but I would say, certainly for Wordnerds to make sense, we'd be looking for upwards of maybe 1,000 tweets or Facebook posts, or maybe a couple of hundred survey responses, because the data tends to be a bit richer.
There's obviously different demographics for different thingies as well. So yeah, I'm a Twitter user myself, but I don't use like I've never used TikTok in my life. I think like that's past me. So you must, if you're looking for, I take it like different sets of data, then you'd probably be targeting different channels.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh yeah, sorry, you were saying something.
No, no, just agreeing.
Yeah. Anonymous has asked, what's been the main insights that you've appeared from tourism data? That's quite a vague question.
So we've done a number of projects looking at essentially what makes Newcastle a place to visit. Why do people visit? For what purposes do they visit? What else? Where else do they go? But also looking at other cities around the UK and in some cases across Europe that maybe compete with Newcastle for tourism trade. So understanding, you know, if people aren't coming to Newcastle, why not? And what other, you know, if people are looking for things like city breaks, which is you know a common reason for people to come to Newcastle. We know that we've got a particular you know, we know that people come for our nightlife for certain cultural aspects, for the access to the coast and into Northumberland. But if they're not coming here for those things, where else might they be going? You know, why are they going to Leeds or to York? And what are the differences there? Are there any attractions or things that the council and the destination management organisations can be promoting essentially to support our tourism sector here? Also looking at data from things like from partners like our airports to understand actually where are people travelling into, where should we be spending money for advertising, all sorts of things related to those sorts of projects, which has been, you know, a really nice piece of work to kind of to be involved with.
Yeah, I think the location of Newcastle might put a few people off, but I guess that's not something you could change because it's quite far away from the rest. But yeah, I have been to York actually, so what am I saying? That's quite far away. I think we'll leave it there. Helen, thank you so much for coming on today. If you want to get in touch with Helen, obviously you can see her details on the screen, but I'll post an email out after shortly. To everyone that came, thank you. We're kicking off second phase of Smart Towns now, so there'll be more webinars with solutions like Wordnerds. Yeah, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Helen.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Okay,
Great questions.
brilliant. Okay, bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.